But I wanted to just introduce the final session of this. We are just going to have a pretty short panel discussion. And Paul Voberding, who you've heard a lot about today, he was the director of the UCSF CFAR. He was the director of the HIV program here, really did so much seminal work. He will be leading us in this panel. And the other members of the panel are Dr. Annie Lukemeyer, who, as you saw, really did the first large trial of doxy-PEP. And has really led the ECTG in lots of different investigational studies. Dr. Peter Hunt, everyone I'm saying is a professor of medicine here. Dr. Peter Hunt, who did all that inflammatory work and is in the Division of Experimental Medicine, and Dr. Steve Deeks, who has been working on cure and did the baboon transplant and everything else that he does. And he's professor of medicine here. So we're going to all come up to this and have a panel discussion about breakthroughs, what's next to come in HIV.
Great, looking across the room, seeing so many friends. And I'm not going to try to do a split.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm only 76, but maybe by the time I'm 81, I can do it. I'll work on it. You've met everyone on the panel in the slides. Diane did a spectacular job of going through the history of the science here. We are short of time, so this is mainly an opportunity to see, you know, living people behind the photos that you've seen. Some of us no longer have hair, but it's great to be back and to see old friends. We're going to do something. We're going to be really quick, guys. We're standing between the audience and the reception. But I wanted to start kind of almost in, I don't know if it's exactly in reverse, but starting with some of the kind of work that's broadly called implementation science, where people think about, you know, here are the great advances in our field, but how can we make them real? How can we bring them to the people? And Monica, you've done so much of this over the years as the director of the clinic. Diane, I think really at the end talked about some of the programs that you've helped lead. Do you want to talk a little bit about where you see things now in terms of bringing the advances to the broader population, both on Ward 86, but more broadly?
Yeah, well, all we've done is taken the great research that everyone's done and then bring it to the clinic. So the rapid program that everyone did, we started in 2015 just for same day, get people from the city and anywhere from the city, if they got diagnosed, treat them right away. Then we started a PrEP clinic. Then we started Golden Compass, and that was when Hulda did the split. It was in 2017. We launched it in this room. And this was the HIV and aging program. They'll be featured on Thursday at the Getting to Zero event that just said people are living so much longer. And then in 2019, there was so much housing insecurity in the city that Diane challenged us and said, can you formulate a low barrier model of care where people will just come in and get their care no matter what time of day it was? And it was always the same group of providers. And that really helped increase virologic suppression rates. And then we went to 2021, and that was the long-acting regimens. And we just said, okay, we'll just use them even if you're just can't take oral ART at all, even though that wasn't how they were studied. And they were really successful in people with housing insecurity and substance use. And then what we've been doing the last couple of years is trying to do low barrier care for all infectious disease prevention. So pre-exposure prophylaxis, hepatitis C, just come in, we'll try to do all of your ID care, we'll try to do your primary care, and then eventually we're going to cure everyone with the broadly neutralizing antibodies and get everyone non-inflamed with the CMV treatment. So as soon as people just do their research, then we will bring it into the clinic.
Good enough. We're going to need a bigger clinic though, I think. So really great. And you know, I think that the importance of what you've done here to the broader population. Talk about how this is being exported to other places, Monica. Do you want to?
Oh, I mean, just that everything we try to do here, we tell people about. And you and Dr. Abrams and Dr. Wofsy formed the San Francisco model of care with everyone here participating. And so the idea was that we do wraparound care no matter what. And so every time something comes up in HIV medicine, we try to bring that specialty in. So latest, we're into metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease. We've got an endocrinologist, thank you, Diana Oba, who's come to our clinic to help us with metabolic and GLP-1. So every time there's something new, we bring that specialty into our clinic and then we disseminate that information.
Before we go on, Donald Abrams, who you saw a lot, I want you to kind of raise your hand. Everyone knows Donald. So Donald and I have been partners in crime for a very long time. Good to have you here as well. Annie, you know, we've heard all the incredible advances in therapies, especially now with lenacapavir in our midst. You talk about the future of HIV treatment. Do we need any more drugs, or do we need less toxic? What are you thinking about?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, Thanksgiving comes around and your family's always like, what? I think we're done with, like, what do you even do all day, right? There's one pill that treats people. Diane really beautifully illustrated that. And so I think the point out there is, what are the unmet needs? And I would say, I think there's three that I'd like to highlight. So in HIV, there are folks who don't want to take a pill every day. I think Monica and others have really nicely highlighted the role of injectables, but not just injectables. Can we do treatment every 4 to 6 months? Can we really space it out? Some people don't want injectables. They want to take a pill once a week or maybe once a month. And we have a lot of those in clinical trials that we're examining. People are aging and have a lot of metabolic challenges as well as premature aging, and to take new combinations of medicines that may spare the bone and renal toxicities of some of the treatments that we have. You know, how can we combine really effective medicines that you can take for a long time that spare those metabolic complications? So that's really important. It's funny, when I started doing this work, it was sort of right at the beginning when all these great medicines came out. It was like HIV drug development is over. And it's just so interesting to see a decade more later how much exciting work we still have to do. And the two other areas I would point out is hepatitis C, right? When I started doing this work, 1/3 of our clinic was co-infected with hepatitis C. We saw revolution with the new hepatitis C medicines, where it was so exciting to be involved in this development. Now we can really universally cure people, but we still haven't done that yet, right? We can cure people with well-tolerated 2 to 3 months, very few side effects. Everybody can be cured, but we're still living with the hepatitis C epidemic. And another unmet need is folks who either aren't being diagnosed or aren't getting connected with the therapy. We're developing, really exciting to think about injectable hepatitis C medicines that maybe with 1 or 2 injections, then you can be done. So for folks who there's just too much of a barrier to getting them connected and getting the pills into them, I'm not giving up on those folks yet, but we know that having an injectable tool might be really helpful to just say, you know, much like dalbavancin, which is exciting in the infectious diseases world, you give it to them twice and then you might be able to be done there. And then lastly, I'll just say with hepatitis B, you know, HIV really led the way. The best hepatitis B drug we have is a HIV drug, right? The tenofovir-based class. And I was so struck by what Diane had to say in her comments, that it really forced people to get their head around treating early. And I think what we've learned from hepatitis B is that we're behind in that thinking. You know, we're 300 million people living with hepatitis B around the world, and we're still debating, well, maybe you can wait to be treated, and, you know, just let's save it for people with high viral loads or only with cirrhosis. And we're really seeing the guidelines shift and tell us we should be treating people earlier. These drugs are not toxic. The virus itself is toxic. It causes cancer. It causes inflammation, all the things that we know from HIV. So I'm really happy to see that pendulum swinging. And we've really learned from the HIV world, we can think about things like a functional cure. We're probably not going to eradicate hepatitis B from the body, but we don't need to do that. And so we can use some of the strategies that the HIV world has really pioneered to understand how we can harness the immune system, as well as really powerful antivirals to control the virus and then get the immune system to take over and put people into the state where most people get to when they have hepatitis B and then they control it on their own. Can we help the folks who don't have control get shifted over to that functional cure, much as we've been seeking in HIV? So I think there's a lot of really exciting work underway, and a lot of it really grows out of the work we've done in HIV.
And I think I'm right that Charlie Rice is giving medical grand rounds tomorrow.
Tuesday. Yeah, sure, that's Tuesday.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Nobel Prize winner for Hep C, and really, I hope it doesn't conflict with other events that are planned here around World AIDS Day.
Yeah.
But if you have a chance, watch it.
But it's
Just
just
a quick comment on where we are with hepatitis B vaccines and some of the recent news.
Yeah.
there.
Well, what I'll say is that hepatitis B vaccines were the first cancer preventing vaccines, and we should really remember that. They're amazing. They work extremely well, and giving a birth dose of the vaccine has really been revolutionary. So it's important to recognize the incredible advances. I know people have a lot of questions that have been raised. There's incredibly well-established science of the benefits of the hepatitis B vaccine. I think it's really been a huge public health triumph, and we want to keep that on the radar, including here in the United States, where we don't have as much hepatitis B, but we don't want to lose those advances.
And this is a weird segue, but you mentioned vaccines, didn't you?
Yeah.
Steve Deeks has been thinking about vaccines for quite a while too, as part of the cure strategy. Steve, tell us about the kitchen sink.
Yeah, the
Especially
kitchen
after
sink study.
Thanksgiving with all the dishes that we've had.
So, yeah, no, this study has been going on for 10 years, and Paul was there at the beginning, helped fund it actually.
Out of my pocket.
Yes. It got published today. It's gotten a lot of attention. And so there was an article in the newspaper, and Lorraine Pearson sends me an email. And Lorraine, I'm not sure what her job is, but she's way up in this. And I don't get emails from Lorraine.
Administration years.
And I opened it up, and she said, we saw this thing in the newspaper or whatever, and we're wondering, did you see these patients on Ward 84? And I said, oh shit, I'm in trouble. And then I read through it, and they said, oh, no, I'm not in trouble. They were actually wanting to brag about it. And then so I was responding, and I said, well, yes, this was done at San Francisco General. And then I began to think about it. And I said, here's what happened, right? We had this 10-year plan. We had this very supportive IRB from the get-go that understands HIV. We had this community support. We had this cohorts that were built by the Department of Public Health on acute infection. You know, we had industry partners just down the street, Gilead, Monogram, everything else. And then we had at the core, you know, the clinic, Ward 86 with the patients, and the Division of Experimental Medicine. Right, that's the key. That's what Mike's vision was. That was the key, the link between the clinic and the scientists, supported by you know, the core immunology lab, and you know, all of these patients had to go through this kitchen sink approach where they got vaccines and antibodies, and it was a mess. I mean, it was very complicated, and there were complications. So we had to get GI involved, we had to get pathology involved, we had to get ophthalmology involved. The entire campus got involved. And no one complained. No one asked for money. Everybody was, it was like this team, right? It could not have been done anywhere else. So my response to Lorraine was, not only was it done here, it could not have been done anywhere else. And I feel that strongly. You know, so we're talking about the San Francisco model of care. I mean, that's the San Francisco model of research, which, and Peter is sort of the champion of this in his leadership role, right? It's all about team science, you know, and you built that. Anyway, what was your question?
I can't remember. You talked a little bit about the cure. I mean, I think it's safe to say that you're still hopeful that we can make continued progress towards that end.
Yeah. So in this study, we gave vaccines, antibodies, and other stuff, and stop therapy. And you know, right? We all know 10 of when you stop therapy, usually at 10 people, the virus will shoot right up. And this time, the virus shot up in 3 people, but in 7 it did, and it did this weird thing where it stayed quite low. And so I think this study and a few other studies have come out about the same time, have proven that we can, with vaccines and other therapies, now induce an immune response that controls the virus. Right? We're not curing anyone, but we actually are making progress. But probably the most important thing in the study was from Rachel Rittershauser and her colleague at the experimental medicine, who looked at these data and did a deep dive and came up with a mechanism. And that mechanism is now something that we can target with the next generation of cures. And it's also, I think, a target for the vaccine world, you know, trying to prevent HIV. So yeah, so it's exciting.
So, Peter, inflammation, inflammation and immunology and all of this, it's all so connected with and with the vaccine. You want to talk about what you've been doing there? I mean, it goes well beyond HIV, as Diane said, with cardiovascular and other conditions.
Yeah, I think it's that missing link that explains why people with HIV are aging faster. So higher risk of heart disease, as Diane talked about, also cancer. Paul and Donald being oncologists, extraordinarily high rates of cancer in people with HIV too, osteoporosis and the like. And it's linked to this increased inflammation. And there's two things I'm excited about in this space now. One is comes from a recent study we did. Turns out that HIV is not the only chronic virus that people live with. Actually, all of us live with chronic viral infections. You all know about the shingles virus. We get vaccinated against that now. But CMV, about half of the people in this room have this chronic virus called CMV. Most people with HIV have it. And it gets worse as a consequence of HIV and that low-level inflammatory state. And it modulates the immune system in important ways. And we thought that if we treated the CMV, we might be able to get some of the inflammation down. And so we showed that inflammation went down, also a lot of risk markers for heart disease and cancer, but most extraordinary to us, physical function improved. So you all know that when you get older, it takes longer to stand up from a chair,
Some exceptions in the room.
Some exceptions, notable exceptions in the front row. So we measured that. It turns out that in the geriatrics literature, people can measure, how long it takes you to do that. We measured this in the trial, and it improved by a couple of seconds. So we're actually, and it was strongly linked to the improvement in the immune system. And so we think we're really on the right track there, and we think it may have implications not just for people with HIV, but also the general population and aging in general. Our understanding of that. So that's one thing I'm really excited about. And the other thing with HIV itself, all of our drugs to date block new rounds of replication, but there's a new class of drugs that are in development now that actually kill the cell once HIV starts coming out of it. That's one of the key things that we think might be leading to inflammation in the first place. And there may be new therapies on the horizon that might interfere with that I'm very hopeful about. So. And they may overlap with the cure agenda.
Super. I think in terms of the time, we should probably thank the panelists for your work and your comments. Thank you very much.